What motivates you? What fires you up? What keeps you going and gets you going when the going gets tough? That's what we're going to be talking about today. And it is different for a lot of people. And just because it works for one person doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody. But I think it's something that we've got to tap into because we're emotional creatures and we go through rhythms, circadian patterns, and we want to be motivated. We need to be motivated, but we get burnt out. We get tired. We get frustrated. Today's interview, I think you're going to like. At the very end, I'm going to sum it up. I'm going to give a bunch of examples, a bunch of hacks and tricks and techniques that you can use to fire yourself up, to find out what is that driver. Now, long term, we hear things about passion and purpose and mission and find your why. And I think our brain needs that. We need something to fall back on. And I'll talk about that at the very end too. And if you're in the courses already, please check out those one-on-ones. When you hear other people have breakthroughs, other people go from frustrated to successful. Because today, our number one problem is why now? Why not wait? It's so much safer to wait. But we have to learn how to sell around that. And I put a one-on-one or a office hours in there because that's what I'm doing at most of the kickoffs now, is coming up with exactly how to prevent that. Repairing it, pretty difficult. Preventing it, it's work. It's a dance, like so much of sales. It's not just that you know it, it's how well you do it. And once you get over that leap, that is one of the epiphanies. Let's get into the interview, and I'll sum it up at the end. Hey, Carly, welcome to the show. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Brian. I started out in sales about 4 years ago. I started at Memory Blue, which I don't know if you're familiar with Memory Blue or not, but they're basically a breeding ground for inside sales professionals. And I got fortunate enough to work with a lot of technology clients and help them with their inside sales strategy. So over time, I ended up building a lot of really close relationships with those technology clients before I moved on to my new gig at Element Analytics, where I'm an inside sales rep to work with enterprise industrial companies for data management. So that's a quick synopsis of who I am and what I do.
And what was it like? Because I do know Memory Blue, and that market is pretty tough, isn't it?
Yes. I have such a close and special relationship with Mark and Chris and Tommy and Nimit, who you might know as well. And I wouldn't trade it at all. It was a really difficult decision, but as most folks know, you just have to evaluate where you are in your career before you move on. And I wouldn't be where I am without them at all. So I'm very grateful for the time that I had there, and I still am really close with everybody there. But it was time for a new chapter.
I bet. And what was that like getting out of college and then being thrown into that? Because that's kind of the boiler room.
Yeah,
right?
It really is. It really is. So when I was in college, I went to Virginia Tech and I studied public relations, and I thought I wanted to get into marketing. And what I noticed when I was interviewing or even applying jobs, nobody wanted anybody without experience. You had to have a year or some change to get a job. And I stumbled across Memory Blue at a career fair. They were the only company I had time to speak with at the career fair, and they gave me a chance. And to be honest, I don't think I realized I was going to be cold calling. I don't have, friends or family in sales. So it was a really new experience for me. But when I was younger, I'm a triplet. So I have two sisters, It was very competitive growing up. And I really found my place at Memory Blue. And, it was a transition for the first few weeks, but it was so much fun. And the environment is very competitive. And that's something that I carry with me today.
And was it awkward at first? Because you'd never done it before. You never knew anybody who'd done it before.
It was awkward. I remember the first guy that answered the phone. I remember his name. I remember exactly how confused he was when I called him, because I was equally as confused.
Someone picked up.
Yeah, exactly. And over time, you get used to that. But it was very uncomfortable, and something that I had on my desk, and I still think about, whenever I try something new, is get comfortable with the uncomfortable. And I think that holds true in every sales position and a lot of things in life. So.
Yeah. And how long did it take you to get used to it? Or did you ever get used to it?
I think about 2 months. It's funny. I'm a big people person. I love to talk to people. But talking on the phone was never a thing that I enjoyed. I wasn't the type of person to call home all the time in school. But once I started working at Memory Blue, all I was doing was talking to people on the phone. And now I love it. And especially in the world today, when everything's on Zoom or you're talking on the phone all day long, I think it's great.
Cool. And what motivated you to do that? Was it just a job, or did you kind of see it
Initially,
as a future?
Initially it was just a job. The way it's set up from the sales rep side is you sign on for 15 months. You're going to get put in front of technology clients and hopefully land a job. But at first, that was my thought. I was going to land a job. I had a few offers from my clients, and they weren't really clients I was passionate about. And I think you do have to be passionate, to sell. So I ended up moving up onto Tommy's team, and that's where I stayed for the next 3 years. And that's where I started to develop my career path. And sales is absolutely going to be that path. I think a lot of people in sales reap the benefits of that kind of lifestyle and working your own type of schedule, if that makes sense. And as somebody that I'm a big planner, I think about the future all the time, and I'm trying to evaluate where I'll be constantly in the next 5 years and so on. And I think sales aligns really nicely with that plan. So.
And I'm sure you saw a lot of people wash out, because I gotta believe it's a kind of a high churn type of thing, because certainly it's a generational thing too, because people today text, they don't chat on the phone, or they might chat on FaceTime.
Exactly. Yeah, the role is definitely high churn. Memory Blue is better about it than most companies, just because I studied it so much, and I'm sure you have too. It's like 30-40%. And I don't think our numbers were that high, but it was always weird when, the person next to you is like no longer there. And it wasn't just because they left. It could be that they were hired, but it gets in your head sometimes. But I think as long as you have the right mindset, whether it's at Memory Blue or wherever, and you keep your own goals in mind, then it'll work out for the best. But I think that's where most people struggle. They don't know what their goals are. And so they don't know what they're working towards. And then they're like, oh my gosh, this is so monotonous. I can't stand it. Prospects are mean. And then they turn out, and some move on to different companies where they'll kind of flutter for the next few years. And others just get out of sales. And I think it's a good thing that they recognize their skill set that might not be for a position.
Yeah, it's definitely not for everybody. And a lot of people probably do it because it is a job.
Right.
How hard can it be?
Right. Exactly.
And then they get their first hang up, and then they're like, oh, God. Right. And it's because I remember doing it, and it's hard.
Yeah.
Well, what did you see as the right mindset?
Determination is one. And like I said, setting goals for yourself. I didn't realize this probably until year in, and it was easy for me to tie my work goals with my personal financial goals. And so when I could see, oh, I'm going to buy this car, or oh, I want to buy this house, then I could work X amount at work and get there. And some people don't do that. And at first it was more just determination and competitiveness. I want to be number one, just from being in sports and having my two sisters, like that was just always instilled in me. And a lot of people, I think, at Memory Blue, and even the guys that I work with now, they were athletes, and they have that mindset too. So I think that's a big part. At least it was for me.
Yeah, the competitiveness. But how about being good on the phone? The competitiveness gets you to do it.
Yes, that's true. Being good on the phones, always being able to self-reflect and take criticism when you don't want to hear it, which is not easy. Definitely not easy for me. But that was just something that's kind of beaten into your brain at Memory Blue. Like, you didn't have the choice. And now I'm doing call evals with like my new team, and my boss thinks it's fascinating that we're willing to self-reflect and have the self-awareness of what could be better and what went wrong and how we could continue to improve. And that holds true for even like closing calls, when you think you know everything, and then you go back and listen to the call and you're like, oh my goodness, that was terrible. But you use it as a learning opportunity to better yourself.
And what did that look like? Did you have a pre-call checklist or a flow that you looked at, a workflow of the call?
So for cold calling, I do. I'm an overthinker, so I try to map out every scenario in my head, and especially as you're ramping. And I do this now in my new position. I try to have every scenario mapped out, which is not always the case, but at least I have some direction. And then for my closing calls, I always thought about, what will Mark or Tommy or my new boss Steve, what will they ask me when I get off the call about the prospect's problems? And that taught me to be really curious. And that's also something that I always struggled with, is just being curious and not overly assumptive. So when I think about what Tommy's going to ask or what Steve's going to ask, that helps me kind of map out exactly what I need to get out of that call. And so I know what those answers are going to be when I hang up the phone, hopefully.
And what sport did you play?
Basketball.
Okay. So you had a coach. It was a team sport. You got a lot of feedback. And that helped, right? That kind of mindset.
Yeah. I think back to basketball in high school. I had this, my team wasn't very good, to be honest. My team was terrible. So it makes you be a little bit more driven within. Like, I felt like I had to carry the team on my back. And I had a coach that also realized that my sophomore year, when I joined the varsity team, and I always had this goal to be first team. And I knew that the head coach for this woman she was an assistant coach, but I knew the head coach didn't have the heart to tell me what I needed to do to get there, which is frustrating. So I had my dad keep me stats and tell me what I need to do, and I would go home and 30-degree weather and play, and as long as I could, until my mom was like yelling at me to come inside. And then when I got this new coach, she was working with me after practice and telling me very bluntly what I needed to do. And I was able to reach my goals at the end of my senior season. And, if I had that coaching 3 years prior, my future would have looked a lot different. And that's something I always think about. And same with sales. I was the last person to leave the office. I would stay in the office until like 10 o'clock. I remember days 10 o'clock was not a big deal. 1 o'clock in the morning, not a big deal. Because I knew I had a number to hit, and I knew that I wanted to be number one. And the month doesn't wait for anybody. So I'm not going to do quota.
There's no pause. No time out in sales.
No. And some people on my team now, they're like, why are you working so late? Because they're all West Coast. And so my calls will be later in the day. And I'm like, this is normal. And if anything, I feel like I'm getting a break because I don't have to drive home after working till 7 p.m. I'm already home.
Save all that money on rent.
Yeah, exactly.
And what did competitiveness mean to you? Was it getting the most meetings, making the most money? It wasn't on activity, was it?
No, it's not about activity to me. You know, for me, it's about becoming predictable so I can predict how much money I'm going to make in 2021 and what do I need to do to get there. I don't really care about how many dials I need to make. I think it's all about strategy.
Yeah.
And that's something I learned on Tommy's team and I'm doing now. So it's being number one on my team. And this is bad to say, but also being better than my sisters, even though my sisters are doing extraordinarily well. It's just one of those things that hasn't left me since childhood, and we're all the same. And my mom's like, why do you guys still compete? You guys are 25, 26 years old. And I'm like, Mom, we just can't get out of it. You know, it's just one of those things.
Well, as long as it's friendly competition, it's good.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, Haley's in the Marines, and she could beat me. She could beat me up probably, but she could beat me in a race. She could beat me in a physical competition. And there's some things that I do that she wouldn't even imagine doing. Like she was here over Christmas and she stayed at my house and I was cold calling because I had to. And she's like, I can't believe that you're calling 100 people and they answer the phone and they talk to you. I'm like, well, that's just part of the job. And then my other sister, she's an engineer and her way of thinking is a lot different. It's a little bit more logical, whereas I'm more creative, I guess you could say. So it's all fun and games. It's not like, you know, we're beating each other up literally, but it's a lot of fun. And that's I think where a lot of my drive comes from.
And I think that's important in sales. So, and I like the idea that you weren't focused solely on the activity. You know,
yeah.
So many of the appointment stuff is activity based, but that doesn't get the appointment. That gets you just busy.
Sure. Yeah.
And what was your process as far as becoming better at getting the meeting? Was it questions, research?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a lot of things. So like 2.5 years ago, I started on Tommy's team, right? And I was new. I was pulled into a few different roles, so I wasn't sure if I was going to like it or not. But once I got into the role that I was supposed to be in, I was like, oh, wait, I can't be number 2. I need to figure this out. So fortunately, the month or two prior, I had spent a lot of time analyzing the types of companies that we worked with and the types of buyers. I did not want to waste my time. I didn't want to waste my closer's time with people that couldn't buy or even influence a deal. So I was just shooting for the stars. I wanted to talk to the highest people I could get on the phone or get to respond. And my game really wasn't dialing. It was strategic emails. And I was occurring 20 to 30 outbound meetings a month for like nine months straight, or not 9 months, like 6 months straight before I got promoted to being a closer. And when I started closing, same story. I didn't want to spend all day dialing and have 3 people pick up the phone. You know, I had to be really creative. And so I started using my network. I started looking back at the people I sold to before and finding where they went. And then when I moved into the enterprise position at Memory Blue, right before I left, you know, Mark and Tommy wanted me to start mapping out accounts. And that was a little bit difficult because we didn't understand if there was pain associated with these accounts. We were kind of just mapping them out. We hadn't had a ton of conversations, but I knew that was something that was important. And so when I came to Element and I finally got settled in, this was probably 2 months ago, I started to listen into the calls that we were having and understood that there's pain. And we're talking to people that are low level. They don't know who to point you to because we're selling to Fortune 1000 companies. And there's obviously thousands of people in these companies. And so what I've been working on the last 2 months, which is a little bit of a stretch, the last couple of weeks really focused on is mapping out these accounts based on what I know from previous conversations. And I'm able to create these really awesome org charts And my goal is to make my next meeting really impactful. And we're starting to see some of that come to fruition, and some of the accounts that people before me were working for a really long time. And where these cycles, they haven't gotten predictable because we're a startup. And my goal is to make things predictable here. And with the account mapping, I've noticed the cycles are moving a little bit faster. We're getting into more meaningful conversations a lot quicker. And hopefully that'll turn into some deals won in Q1. So that's my thought. I can't speak to numbers exactly just yet, but that's what I find most important.
And I'm sure at Memory Blue, but I'm not sure about your current company. How did you learn all the technology and stuff? Because it's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. With Memory Blue, it was unique because it wasn't that I had to understand the technology as much as I needed to earn the prospect's trust.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, like my current job was a client, and I knew the highest level of what they did. And so when I came here, the first month or two was really trying to understand the jargon, and that was the adjustment. It wasn't really the cycle so much, because there are some similarities between the services and the sale for software, but learning the jargon, I just had to break it down into my own words. And so I was doing a lot of digging online. I was reading a lot of different articles that didn't just come from Element. And I was spending a lot of time with my pre-sales people, because they all said things differently, and I could pick up different pieces of what things meant. And I remember about a month or so ago, it was right before my 90 days, and I was trying to explain some use cases as to why the folks in my pipeline would buy. And my boss, Steve, was like, "How long have you been here?" And I was like, "Maybe 2.5 months, not that long." And he's like, "I thought you've been here a lot longer." But I think part of it was just because I knew from being an SDR years ago for clients, I knew what they were saying when I would call them and spit out a bunch of jargon. They didn't understand it, and then I also didn't understand it.
Right.
You have to dumb it down for yourself a little bit.
Well,
and over time, it starts to make sense.
You have to understand, but they're going to ask a question, and then you're going to fall apart.
Exactly.
Like, what does that mean? And if you don't know what it means.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of companies don't help reps. They give you marketing jargon that doesn't really mean anything. Big data, cloud enabled, digital disruption. It's like, okay, well, so what?
Yeah.
How do you?
It is a lot of fluff.
Yeah. Did you try and come up with metaphors, so that this is like something else, so that anyone could understand it?
Yes, I created I'm a big Excel person. I don't use it for its intended purposes, but I use it for organizing thought. So I have a jargon tab that has probably 100 different terms, the definition and what it means to me. And that was what I was doing the first 4 weeks, just because I didn't have anything else to do. And I was listening to all these calls and I didn't know what was going on. So I just take a note of something that I heard and then schedule time with my sales engineers to help me understand it better. And now when I watch the demos, I'm like, this is making some sense. Whereas before it was a little bit all over the place. And I feel a lot better and relieved, because I was nervous. I'm not going to lie. I was nervous to learn the jargon because there's so much. And I'm not talking to salespeople and marketing people anymore. I'm talking to IT people and operations people. And sometimes operations people don't know what they don't know. So you have to be a little bit more educated. And that's the difference in this sale is I'm educating a lot of people in this nuanced time in their industry. So it has to make sense to me before I can make it make sense to them.
And in this new role, I'm not sure, do you have people that you're competing against? You always have competitors. Do nothing as a competitor.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And if I didn't, it would be myself. I would have to compete against myself. I do have a competitor. His name's AJ. He came from Memory Blue too, actually. He was a BDR for this campaign, and he got moved into the inside sales closing position when he got hired Element. So
Yeah.
it's been fun. He had a leg up on me because he understood the jargon and he'd been doing it for a little bit longer, but he hadn't closed before. So we're learning a lot from each other. He's teaching me the ropes when it comes to the industry, and then I can teach him some of the ropes when it comes to closing. So it's been fun.
And I'm competitive as well, and it really is my motive, because like when I see a competitor do something, it's like having a cup of coffee. I now have a good hour or two of work where I was ready to go to sleep or something.
Yeah.
And it's friendly and it's constructive too. It's not bad.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
today, I think a lot of people look at competitiveness as bad. And I'm like, no, it's good.
Do they? I don't know. You should interview Joey Cohen, and he's still at Memory Blue, and he was I made him my target because he had been doing it for a long time, and I had Salesforce reports. I had alerts on what was going on. I was tracking his metrics. I was tracking where he got his deals from. I also learned a lot from him, and I started to use it against him. And we always would joke, if COVID didn't happen, which a lot of people say, but if COVID didn't happen and we didn't reorg the way that we did at Memory Blue, I was coming for him. I almost got him my first year, and he was nervous. He was very nervous. And he's like, Carly, you're getting a little bit crazy over there. You have Salesforce reports on what deals I'm closing. But I'm like, well, I want us to be the best, and I was learning from the best at the time, and so you were my milestone, my marker, if you will.
Right.
And it was fun, and he thought it was fun too. Of course it was friendly, and we weren't hostile or anything. We're still really close friends, but it was just one of those things. If other people on my team, were not, competing with me, I had to find another competitor, and that was Joey.
And when you see reps that aren't competitive,
Mm-hmm.
when I was a manager, it's like if somebody lost and they said, yeah, you win some, you lose some. I was like, not on my team.
Yeah, I know. That's why I couldn't be a manager, at least not at this point in my life. I'm too selfish, and that doesn't click with me. I don't understand. But if that's the way people are, you can't change them. And I learned that through mentoring people too. And it was fun mentoring them, but you can't force somebody to do something that they don't want to do, or be. And competitiveness is,
and I think it's one of the
thing.
Good things that comes out of hiring people who have played sports, because, or middle children, people who had to constantly compete for food, attention, things, right?
That's what.
And too many people come out of school feeling a little entitled that there should be a career waiting. I just put 4 years and a ton of money, and where's my career? And it's like, it doesn't work that way anymore.
I know, unfortunately. And you know what? The interesting thing about the job that I have and the job from Memory Blue, I don't think that college did me a ton of good. I could have probably done it without going to school, but, college teaches you a lot of the life lessons. I think it's just interesting, to your point, coming out of school and expecting a job. The market's not the way that it used to be, I suppose, and things have changed so much, but.
Cool. Hey, this has been a fun conversation. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
LinkedIn. Just search Carly Armentrout. I don't think there's any others on LinkedIn.
There aren't.
But I'm at Element. I'm at Element now, so feel free to follow me, connect with me. I love giving advice to up and coming sales professionals or people that are trying to find their path. I do that a lot for Tommy still, and if anybody needs advice, I'm happy to give it.
State management, emotional regularity. These are things that we need to develop. And what was ironic about this interview that you just listened to, and I hope you made it through. I know there was some sound quality issues at times, was that the same day I interviewed this person, I interviewed somebody who was completely different. And I'm going to post that shortly. But the contrast was enlightening because what it taught me was everyone is different. and developing these skills of motivation, whether it's about competitiveness, which resonated with me, and the other person had pretty much a similar youth as me, growing up as a baseball pitcher, and what you have to do in that particular role. Because when you're there trying to do something that seems really simple, throw a baseball into the strike zone, becomes very difficult, not just because, you have somebody right in front of you, your team's counting on you, people on the opposite team are yelling at you, you're a little kid and parents are yelling at you, and the pressure is completely on you, and it's pretty easy to mess up. Sound like sales? A little bit, doesn't it? Now, how about if you're not competitive? That's okay. But you need a motive. You need to be able to get yourself to do things when you don't feel like it. The people who, follow their feelings are misunderstanding what's going on in our brain. Our subconscious doesn't really care about tomorrow. It cares about right here, right now. It wants food. It wants rest. It wants to have fun. And it will take over. It hijacks our prefrontal cortex, our thinking brain, all the time, because it's 90% more powerful in volume and in evolution. So what we have to do is proactively, before we need it, train ourselves to regulate our emotions, to be able to handle these crazy things. Now, a great example of it is post something on social. Now, I post every day pretty much, and you get a lot of trolls for whatever reason. They just want to disagree, mismatchers. They just can't agree with anybody, and they misinterpret it, or they hijack the conversation to make it about them, and it can become pretty upsetting. Now, at the moment, and I know what to do, consciously, I know just either delete it, ignore it, block them, whatever, just don't let it bother you. But it gets under your skin. And in sales, all day long, things get under our skin. People don't show up for meetings. People misrepresent how interested they are. Things change. Our boss is hounding us to do a bunch of stupid stuff that doesn't matter, and pressuring us to get things done that are really hard and that we don't have control over. We have to find ways of regulating our emotions, getting motivated and not getting upset. This alone will help you have longevity in sales. Why do people wash out? It's because they can't take the rejection. They can't take the grind. But there's smarter ways of doing it. But even when you do it really smart, you have to take feedback. You have to be able to look at what you did and not have it be personal, not have it be an attack on your identity. Now, what is your passion? I mean, that passion word is, I think, overused because it implies that it pre-exists. And if you ask a little kid what they just want to eat. They want to sleep. They want to break stuff. But when you grow up, we have to develop this. What is our purpose, our mission, our why, our calling? When you develop that, something that's bigger than you, that is bigger than today, and maybe even this week, month, quarter, or year, that will help you stay focused, to keep from having our subconscious mind hijack us. And I think one of the problems in sales is when it hijacks us, we forget the game that we're playing. And what ends up happening is we look at sales as a one-off type situation where it is just this particular situation is completely unique, but it's only where we are in the game. And what I learned early in sales was that very few people understand that the game needs to be written down, that it's bigger than what do you do in this case? What would you do if this happened? Those are reasonable questions, obvious questions that I hear all the time. But nobody takes a step back and says, well, how do I prevent this? Because the prevention question forces you to think bigger picture. But if it is a prevention profession, because think about every time something goes wrong in sales, how hard is it to repair? How hard is any type of break in any kind of relationship? Whether it's, in a couple relationship, a friendship, where you say something you really don't mean, where you're frustrated, but that lingers. Repairing that is very hard. Preventing it is hard too, but not as hard. If you just didn't say that thing, you wouldn't have to take it back, and it wouldn't be, because there's no real taking it back. You can apologize, someone can forgive you, but they don't really forget. And that's really what sales is like, is that prevention helps you understand the full game and helps you plan, helps you prepare for it, and helps you focus on what's most likely to close. Now, if you want to learn more about sales, I got a couple of other podcasts. I got the Sales Questions, Brutally Honest Answers. Are you checking that out? If you want to get into sales leadership, or you want to understand how they think, they do think. They're actually very nice people. They're just in tough situations as well. You think being a rep is hard. Imagine managing reps. I've done that show for a while. I enjoy it because when you get a great leader, or you can get a good leader and get them to think differently, it's a lot of fun. So go check out that sales leadership show, as well as the B2B revenue leadership show. Check out the courses at b2brevenue.com. Think of it more as a community with content, with coaching, and putting it all together, where everybody has an aligned mission: get more meetings, start more conversations, or winning the complex sale. Now, the most common question I get is, which one's right for me? And I always flip it back to them because I don't know you. I ask, what's your biggest problem right now? And of course, they don't know because no one wants to think about their problems. I go, well, take a look at your pipeline. Do you have real deals there, but they're not closing? Most people say, nah, they're just a lot of targets. And I go, okay, are they talking to you? No, not really. Then start the conversation, get the meetings, the course for you. How about if I got existing accounts, I got reasonable pipeline, I got a little bit of inbound, but things are taking forever. They're small and they tend not to die or come up with no decision. Then winning the complex sale is the right one for you. That's the answer. There's a frequently asked questions video on my YouTube channel, as well as the website. And you can watch that, and it pretty much answers every major question that I get. Now, is it expensive? You can judge for yourself. And don't do it if it's a lot of money for you. For most reps, who are doing reasonably well or want to do well, it's nothing. It's either a lunch or a dinner per month. And it's not a membership, though. So it is a 12-payment commitment, a year-long commitment. You have access to the content for 1 year. You can pay all at once as well. Just move up and down the page. It shows both options. You have access to the content, which is ungated, 100% access all at once. Office hours is every other Friday. I put the calendar link in the dates in the very first chapter, called Office Hours Must Read First. I didn't mean to hide it there, but that's where it is, the very first chapter. Calendar, as well as a Zoom link. It's 2 p.m. Eastern Time on Fridays. And they're all recorded and put in the course. Everything is recorded and put into the course so you never miss anything. The great part of that is there's a couple of years of that content in there, which is pure gold. Because how do you learn? You either learn by consuming content, by talking about it, or hearing other people talk about it, and then doing it. I can't do the thing for you. I can only help share the distinctions between what works and what may not work. So it's a real community as opposed to people who just come and go when they want something, when they want a job, when they're stuck, when they have a question. It's real engagement, real people talking about real deals. So go there, b2brevenue.com. Check out YouTube. Just search Brian Burns Sales there. If you see my stuff on LinkedIn, give it a little thumbs up, a little comment, a little share. I'll see you next time. And tell a friend about the show.